For 3 years, Marcus Cole worked a night shift as security guard at Harborview Apartments, barely speaking to residents, quietly patrolling hallways while tenants barely noticed him. He sat behind the security desk from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., watching monitors, checking doors, responding to noise complaints with professional efficiency, but minimal conversation. To the 200 residents of Harborview, he was just a quiet black security guard who kept their building safe. What they didn't know was that the man watching their security cameras was a former Delta Force operator who had conducted classified missions across 4 continents, and tonight, his elite training would save lives. Marcus Cole, 45 years old, had been living a deliberately ordinary life since retiring from the military 5 years ago. The transition from Master Sergeant in the Army's most elite Special Operations Unit to overnight security guard at a mid-rise apartment complex in Norfolk, Virginia, was as dramatic as it was intentional. Every night at 10:45 p.m., Marcus arrived at Harborview Apartments wearing the same navy blue security uniform, carrying the same simple gear: radio, flashlight, incident report forms, and a thermos of black coffee. What the residents couldn't see was the way he automatically scanned the parking lot for threats before entering the building, the way he checked every angle and sight line, the way he moved with the efficient precision of someone trained to operate in the world's most dangerous places. The residents saw a middle-aged security guard who spoke in brief, professional phrases: "Good evening," "Building secure," "Have a good night." They had no idea they were looking at someone who had jumped into hostile territory on 5 continents, who had led missions that couldn't be acknowledged by any government, who had earned commendations that would never appear in any public record. Marcus preferred it that way. After 23 years of living in shadows, conducting operations that existed only in classified files, he found peace in work that was straightforward, predictable, and didn't require him to carry weapons or make life-and-death decisions. Harborview Apartments was a modern complex popular with young professionals, military families from nearby Naval Station Norfolk, and retirees who wanted security and convenience. The building housed teachers, nurses, IT workers, Navy personnel, and civilians who worked at the various military installations around Hampton Roads. Most residents barely acknowledged Marcus beyond polite nods. He was part of the building's infrastructure, like the elevators or the air conditioning. Essential but invisible. A few tried to engage him in conversation, but Marcus's responses were always brief, professional, and designed to end interaction quickly. "How long have you worked here, Marcus?" asked Jennifer Walsh, a nurse who often worked late shifts at Norfolk General Hospital. 3 years, ma'am." "Do you like the job?" "It's good work." Jennifer sensed there was more to Marcus's story, but his body language clearly discouraged further questions. She noticed things about him that others missed. The way he always positioned himself with clear views of all approaches, the way his eyes constantly moved, assessing and cataloging everything around him, the way he seemed to process information faster than necessary for simple security work. What Jennifer couldn't know was that Marcus had spent 2 decades in what the military called special mission units, elite organizations that conducted direct action, special reconnaissance, and counterterrorism operations in support of national security objectives. He had been part of missions that prevented terrorist attacks, rescued hostages, and eliminated threats that could never be publicly acknowledged. Marcus chose security work because it allowed him to protect people without the moral complexity of combat operations. No ambiguous rules of engagement, no classified objectives, no missions that required him to do things that would follow him home in nightmares. Just simple, clear responsibility. Keep the building and its residents safe. The routine was comforting. Start shift at 11 p.m. by reviewing the day shift incident log. Walk the perimeter, checking all exterior doors and windows. Monitor security cameras, watching for anything unusual. Patrol interior hallways every 2 hours. Respond to any resident concerns with professional courtesy and minimal engagement. Marcus had developed efficient systems for everything. His patrol routes were optimized for maximum coverage in minimum time. His incident reports were precise and thorough. His radio protocols were crisp and professional. Even in civilian security work, he applied the planning and execution standards he'd learned in special operations. The residents of Harborview lived their normal lives, largely unaware of the level of protection they actually had. Marcus spotted potential security issues that would have gone unnoticed by typical security guards. He identified and quietly addressed vulnerabilities in building access, lighting, and surveillance coverage. He noticed patterns in resident behavior that might indicate domestic violence, drug activity, or other problems. But he handled everything with the same low-key professionalism. A brief report to building management, a discreet conversation with local police if necessary, always keeping his own involvement minimal and his methods unremarkable. The closest Marcus came to revealing his background was when he noticed suspicious activity around the building. 3 times in the past year, he had observed surveillance behavior that suggested potential criminal planning. Individuals conducting what appeared to be reconnaissance of the building's security measures, schedules, and vulnerabilities. Each time, Marcus had documented the activity, enhanced security protocols temporarily, and quietly coordinated with local law enforcement. The potential threats had disappeared without ever developing into actual incidents. The residents never knew they had been in danger, and Marcus never mentioned that his threat assessment and countermeasures had prevented possible break-ins or worse. That changed on a Tuesday night in November, when everything Marcus had been trained for became suddenly, desperately relevant. At 2:47 a.m., Marcus was conducting his routine hallway patrol when he heard what others might have dismissed as ordinary apartment noise, footsteps, voices, the sound of movement. But Marcus's ear was trained to distinguish between normal activity and potential threats. What he heard was wrong. Too many footsteps, coordinated movement, voices using tactical communication patterns. Looking to the hallway window toward the parking lot, Marcus saw what civilian security guards might have missed. 3 vehicles positioned to control exits, individuals moving with military precision, and tactical gear that suggested this wasn't a random burglary. Marcus immediately radioed for backup and called 911, but he realized that police response time would be at least 8 minutes. Whatever was happening, the residents of Harborview were on their own until help arrived. Moving with the silent efficiency of his special operations training, Marcus began implementing defensive measures that he had hoped never to use again. He accessed the building's emergency systems, securing all exterior doors and activating lockdown protocols. He used the intercom system to announce a building emergency, instructing residents to stay in their apartments and away from windows. What Marcus had identified was a home invasion crew targeting apartment 4B, where Navy Lieutenant Sarah Kim lived alone. The crew had done their homework. They knew Kim was a single female officer who worked in Navy intelligence. They had identified her schedule, and they had planned their approach to avoid building security. What they hadn't planned for was a security guard with Delta Force training. Marcus used building systems and his own tactical knowledge to create obstacles for the intruders. He controlled elevator access, manipulated lighting to create advantages for defensive positions, and used security cameras to track the intruders' movements throughout the building. When the crew reached the 4th floor, they found Marcus waiting for them. The confrontation lasted less than 3 minutes. 3 armed intruders against 1 unarmed security guard should have been no contest. But Marcus Cole wasn't just any security guard. Using techniques that couldn't be learned in any civilian training program, Marcus systematically neutralized each threat. Hand-to-hand combat skills developed through years of close-quarters battle training. Tactical movement patterns designed for small unit operations. Situational awareness and decision-making processes honed in combat zones. When Norfolk police arrived 8 minutes later, they found 3 subdued intruders, 1 very shaken Navy lieutenant, and a security guard calmly filling out an incident report. Officer David Martinez was the first responder to the scene. He found Marcus sitting at his security desk, methodically documenting the incident as if home invasions were routine. "Sir, I need to get your statement about what happened here." 3 individuals gained unauthorized access to the building at approximately 0247 hours. I observed them moving toward the 4th floor with apparent intent to break into apartment 4B. I confronted them and detained them until your arrival. Martinez looked around the hallway. The 3 intruders were unconscious, zip-tied with what appeared to be professional restraints, positioned exactly where responding officers could safely secure them. "Sir, can you explain how you, as a security guard, managed to subdue 3 armed individuals?" Marcus hesitated for the first time in 3 years of brief, professional responses. "I have some military training, officer." As Martinez interviewed witnesses and processed the scene, he began to realize that Marcus's some military training was a significant understatement. The tactical precision with which the threat had been neutralized, the professional restraint techniques, the systematic approach to building security. This wasn't standard civilian security training. By 6 a.m., word of the incident spread throughout Harborview apartments. Residents gathered in the lobby, talking in hushed tones about the quiet security guard who had single-handedly stopped what could have been a violent home invasion. Jennifer Walsh, the nurse who had tried to engage Marcus in conversation, looked at him with new understanding. Marcus, what you did tonight, that wasn't normal security guard work. Just did my job, ma'am. No, that was something else. That was... She paused, searching for the right words. That was military. Serious military. Lieutenant Sarah Kim, the intended victim, approached Marcus as he was preparing to end his shift. Mr. Cole, I need to thank you. Those men, they were armed, they knew my schedule, they knew I lived alone. If you hadn't been here, you're a safe lieutenant. That's what matters. Mr. Cole, I'm Navy intelligence. I know what tactical proficiency looks like. What you did tonight required training that most people don't have access to. May I ask what your military background is? Marcus looked at Lieutenant Kim for a long moment. He saw in her face the same professional assessment he had seen in fellow operators. Someone trying to identify his capabilities based on observed performance. Army, ma'am. Special operations. What unit? Another pause. That's classified, ma'am. Lieutenant Kim understood immediately. In military intelligence, she knew that certain special operations units operated under security classifications that extended long after service ended. Mr. Cole, I think you may have saved my life tonight. Just glad I was here, Lieutenant. The incident might have ended there, with Marcus returning to his quiet routine and residents gradually forgetting about the night their security guard revealed unexpected capabilities. But Lieutenant Kim was too curious and too grateful to let it go. She began researching Marcus Cole's background, using her intelligence training and security clearance to access military databases that weren't available to civilians. What she found made her realize just how extraordinary the man protecting their building really was. Master Sergeant Marcus Cole, U.S., Army Special Forces, multiple deployments to Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, and other locations that remain classified. Airborne qualified, Ranger qualified, Special Forces qualified, combat decorations, including Bronze Stars and Purple Hearts. Final assignment with a special mission unit that didn't officially exist. But the most remarkable discovery was what Marcus had done since leaving the military. No high-paying defense contractor job. No consulting work trading on a special operations background. No attempt to monetize his elite training. Just quiet work as a security guard, protecting ordinary people living ordinary lives. Lieutenant Kim shared her findings with Jennifer Walsh and several other residents who had been asking questions about Marcus's background. The group decided that Marcus deserved recognition for both his service and his actions at Harborview. They organized a quiet gathering in the community room, inviting Marcus to attend under the pretense of discussing building security improvements. When Marcus arrived, he found 30 residents waiting for him, along with a representative from the Norfolk Police Department and someone he didn't recognize in military dress uniform. Mr. Cole, Lieutenant Kim began, we want to thank you for what you did the other night. But we also want to thank you for 23 years of service to our country and for the 3 years you've spent protecting our community. The man in military uniform stepped forward. Master Sergeant Cole, I'm Colonel James Wright, commanding officer of the 1st Special Forces Group. Lieutenant Kim contacted me about your actions here. I wanted to personally thank you for upholding the standards of special operations excellence, even in civilian service. Marcus looked around the room at faces he had seen for 3 years. Residents who had passed him with polite nods, people whose names he knew from incident reports and patrol observations, neighbors who had been strangers despite living in the same building. I appreciate this, Marcus said quietly, but I was just doing my job. Jennifer Walsh stood up. Marcus, that's what we've learned about you. For you, just doing your job means excellence, protection, and service, whether that job is special operations or building security. Colonel Wright continued. Master Sergeant Cole, your actions demonstrate that military excellence doesn't end when the uniform comes off. You spent 3 years applying special operations principles to protect civilians, and last week you proved that a warrior's commitment to protecting others never expires. The gathering continued for 2 hours. Residents shared stories about feeling safer because of Marcus's presence, about noticing his professionalism and dedication, about realizing in retrospect that their building had been protected by someone with extraordinary capabilities. Marcus, for the first time in 3 years, began to open up about his experience, not the classified details of his military service, but the philosophy that had guided both his special operations career and his civilian work. In special operations, we learned that mission success depends on attention to detail, thorough preparation, and commitment to protecting others. Those principles apply whether you're conducting counterterrorism operations or keeping an apartment building secure. Jennifer Walsh asked a question that several residents have been wondering about. Marcus, why security work? With your background, you could have any job you wanted. Marcus considered the question carefully. After 23 years of complex operations, I wanted simple work. Work where the mission was clear. Keep people safe. Work where I could use my training to protect people without the moral complexity of combat operations. Do you ever miss it? The military. I miss the brotherhood, the sense of purpose, the feeling that what you're doing matters. But I've learned that service doesn't have to be dramatic to be meaningful. Keeping this building secure, making sure residents feel safe, that matters too. The evening ended with something Marcus hadn't experienced since leaving the military, a sense of community, of being appreciated for both his past service and his current contribution. In the weeks following the incident, Marcus's relationship with Harborview residents changed completely. People who had barely acknowledged him now stopped to chat, to ask about building security, to share their appreciation for his dedication. But more importantly, they treated him with the respect due someone who had chosen to serve others throughout his entire career. Marcus found himself becoming more engaged with the community he protected. He organized building security awareness meetings, teaching residents basic safety measures. He coordinated with local police to improve neighborhood watch programs. He used his leadership experience to help building management implement better emergency procedures. 6 months after the home invasion incident, Harborview Apartments received an award from the Norfolk Police Department for outstanding community security practices. The award recognized not just the building's low crime rate, but the innovative security measures and community engagement programs that had made Harborview a model for residential safety. Marcus accepted the award on behalf of the building, but his brief speech focused on the residents themselves. Security isn't just about having a guard or cameras or alarm systems. It's about creating a community where people look out for each other, where everyone takes responsibility for collective safety. The residents of Harborview have built that kind of community. After the ceremony, Colonel Wright approached Marcus with an unexpected offer. Master Sergeant Cole, the Army is developing new programs for transitioning special operations personnel to civilian careers. We need someone with your experience to help design training that prepares elite soldiers for meaningful civilian service. Would you consider a consulting position? Marcus thought about the offer for several weeks. The work would be important, helping other special operations veterans find purpose and direction after military service. It would use his experience and expertise in ways that could benefit others who would walk similar paths. But it would also mean leaving Harborview, leaving the community he had come to care about, leaving work that had given him peace and purpose. In the end, Marcus negotiated a compromise. He would work part-time as a consultant for the Army's transition programs while continuing his security duties at Harborview. He would help design curricula that taught former special operations personnel how to apply their skills in civilian careers, not just high-profile positions in defense contracting, but meaningful work in communities across America. There are thousands of former special operations personnel who could make enormous contributions to civilian communities, Marcus explained to Colonel Wright. But they need to understand that service doesn't end when the uniform comes off. It just takes different forms. Marcus's story became a model for the Army's transition programs. His example of finding purpose in community through seemingly ordinary work inspired other veterans to look beyond traditional post-military careers. A year later, Marcus received a letter from a former Delta Force operator named Steve Martinez, who had read about Marcus's story in a military newsletter. Master Sergeant Cole, your story inspired me to take a job as a school security coordinator in Texas. I thought it would be temporary, just something to pay bills while I figure out my next move. But I've realized that protecting kids and teachers is as important as any mission I conducted overseas. Thank you for showing me that service doesn't have to be dramatic to be meaningful. Similar letters arrived regularly. Former SEALs working as hospital security supervisors, ex-Rangers managing security for community centers, retired Green Berets protecting schools and churches. all of them finding that their elite training could be applied to protect ordinary Americans living ordinary lives. Marcus framed several of these letters and hung them in the Harborview Security Office, not as monuments to his own service, but as reminders that every job has a potential for excellence, that every form of work can be a form of service. Today, Marcus still works the night shift at Harborview Apartments. He still patrols hallways, monitors security cameras, and responds to resident concerns with professional courtesy. But now he's also part of the community he protects. Residents stop by the security desk to chat about their days, to ask for advice, to share good news or concerns. Marcus knows their names, their schedules, their families. He's become not just a building security guard, but its quiet guardian, its connection point, its steady presence that makes Harborview feel like home rather than just a place to live. The incident report from that November night is filed away in Norfolk police records, a brief account of a home invasion attempt that was quickly resolved. But for the residents of Harborview Apartments, it represents something more significant. The discovery that extraordinary people often choose ordinary work, that heroes don't always seek recognition, and that the most important protection often comes from people who prefer to serve quietly. Marcus Cole's story reminds us that military excellence doesn't end when service ends. It just finds new applications. That special operations training can be used to protect teachers and nurses and families, not just to conduct classified missions. That a warrior's commitment to protecting others can be fulfilled in apartment building lobbies just as meaningfully as in foreign combat zones. The next time you see a security guard, a crossing guard, a building maintenance worker, remember Marcus Cole. Remember that they might have stories of service and sacrifice that would amaze you. Remember that they might have chosen their current work not because they lack other options, but because they found meaning in protecting and serving others in ways that don't require recognition or glory. Sometimes the most important missions are the ones that never make headlines. Sometimes the greatest acts of courage happen in apartment building hallways. And sometimes the most elite warriors are the ones wearing simple uniforms, doing simple work, finding complex purpose in the straightforward mission of keeping others safe. We need to see and appreciate the guardians among us, especially the ones who've chosen to protect us quietly. Because true service doesn't end when the spotlight dims. It continues in the shadows, in the ordinary moments, in the daily choice to use extraordinary skills for the simple purpose of making sure others can sleep safely.